What is up, guys? Welcome back to another UFC prediction video. This week, we got Cory Sandhagen versus Davidson Figueiredo, UFC Iowa. Pretty good fight night overall. Without any further ado, we're going to go ahead and get right into the full card picks. First fight on the card, we have Don'Tale Mayes versus Thomas Peterson. Thomas Peterson, he's 1-2 in the UFC, lost to Jamal Pogues and Shamil the Blob Gaziev by knockout last time out, but he did beat Muhammad Usman. Don'Tale Mayes, he's been in the UFC heavyweight division for a while. He's on a losing skid. He lost to, I believe it was Shamil the Blob Gaziev by decision in his second to last fight. And then I can't remember who he fought last, but he did lose that fight by submission. Actually, I think it was Johnny Walker's brother, Walter Walker, who beat him by submission. And look, Don'Tale Mayes, he has zero tenacity on the ground. He has zero defensive wrestling whatsoever. And Thomas Peterson, while he hasn't shown it in the UFC that much, he does have decent wrestling, decent submissions. He was able to get the job done using those skills on the Dana White Contender Series against Chandler Cole. Got himself a nice little Kimura there after scoring some takedowns. And he's decent on the feet. I mean, he was even having a little bit of success against Shamil, just being a little bit quicker, a little bit faster. I think he's, just as good on the feet. I think he'll be able to hold his own. And in terms of the grappling, Don'Tale Mayes just simply doesn't try at all to defend it. So give me Thomas Peterson to win by submission. Our next fight on the card, we have Gaston Balonos versus Quang Le. Quang Le 0-2 in the UFC. He's lost both of his fights. Lost to Chris Gutierrez in his debut. Got a couple takedowns, but pretty much just got pieced apart there. And then got knocked out by Long Zhao in his most recent fight. Gaston Balonos, he's done all right in the UFC, won his debut. Lost to Marcus McGee, which isn't a bad loss. Marcus McGee is a very good fighter. And then rebounded last time out versus Cortavius Romeus, who's a really good grappler. Gaston Balonos showed some really good defensive improvements with his grappling. He's got really good Muay Thai, really good kicks. His striking is definitely on a higher level here. And just in terms of what I saw in terms of his improvement in the grappling department last time out against Romeus, who is a really tricky grappler in his own right, he really improved defensively there, and on the feet, he has such a big advantage. I think he'll be able to do basically the same thing that Chris Gutierrez did to Quang Le. So give me Gaston Balonos to win a decision. I'm pretty confident in that one. Next fight on the card, we got Ryan Loder versus Azamat Bekoev. Azamat Bekoev absolutely slept Zach Reese in his UFC debut. Pretty good fighter. Had some success on the regional scene. Well-rounded. I believe he trains at ATT. Ryan Loder, he absolutely destroyed Robert Valentin in the finale of The Ultimate Fighter. Really showed some wrestling and really good takedowns, really good ground and pound. That's definitely his skill set. But I think Azamat Bekoev is a little more well-rounded. He's had some 5-round fights on the regional scene. These guys out of ATT, these Russians especially, they're normally pretty well-rounded. And I think that Ryan Loder probably won't have success getting takedowns and just holding down Bekoev. And I think that if this takes place on the feet, which I'm thinking it will, Bekoev, he'll be able to get a little 29-28, just throwing a little more volume, having a little bit more success, getting the better of the fence exchanges, doing a little bit better in the clinch. Give me Bekoev to win a 29-28 decision here. Next fight on the card, we got Jeremy Stephans making a comeback versus Mason Jones. Jeremy Stephans, hardest hitting 145er, the deal. Who the fuck is this guy? He's been in the UFC for a long, long time, but he did go on a pretty bad losing skid towards the end of his career. I mean, we know the knockouts that he's had over Josh Emmett, Michael Johnson, guys like this. But look, Mason Jones, really good fighter. He's only ever lost to Ludovic Klein and Mike Davis, who are very high-level prospects in the 155-pound division. He's well-rounded. He has good grappling, solid on the feet, and in both of his fights versus Ludovic Klein and Mike Davis, which he lost, they were both really competitive. And, I'd put a lot of stock into those performances against that level of competition. Mike Davis and Ludovic Klein are, ranked level guys, like 10 to 15 ranked level guys, in my opinion. Jeremy Stephans, he's been out of the cage for a long time. He's been doing boxing, bare knuckle. Yes, that might improve his hands a little bit, but this is MMA. You're going to have to worry about kicks. You're going to have to worry about fence work. You're going to have to worry about the takedown threat. Give me Mason Jones to get a ground and pound stoppage in round number 2. I think he's going to make pretty light work of Jeremy Stephans here, who, he's had a lot of time off from MMA. I don't think his body's going to be conditioned for it. Probably not going to be super sharp with the grappling. Give me Mason Jones, young, in his prime, only ever lost a super high level of comp. I think he gets the job done pretty easy. Show me Mason Jones getting a takedown in round 2 and just dropping some pretty nasty ground and pound, finishing him off that way. Cameron Smotherman versus Sidey. Give me Cameron Smotherman here. Look, Sidey, he's good. He's had some success in the UFC. I believe he beat Ramon Tavares, but that was an absolute scrap. Davey Grant was able to beat Ramon Tavares pretty handily. So that's not aging super well. Sidey, he had an early stoppage against Ramon Tavares on the Dana White Contender Series where he actually got the contract. And, he's all right, well-rounded, kind of a wiry striker. But I think Cameron Smotherman, he's much more athletic. I think that his performance versus Jake Hadley, I put a lot of stock into. I like the look that he gave in that fight coming in there on short notice. Had a lot of success and really just schooled Jake Hadley for the entirety of that fight on short notice. Jake Hadley, decent level of competition. Cameron Smotherman, I know he trains, alongside some really high-level guys, Austin Bashi, Diego Lopez. He trains with them extensively. They just had a whole camp together. I think he's going to come into this one with a lot of momentum and a lot of confidence as well. Give me Cameron Smotherman to get the job done. I'll take him to win a decision here. Montel Jackson versus Daniel Marcos. I don't know why, but I absolutely cannot stand Daniel Marcos. He beat Adrian Yanez last time out in what was a very, very close fight. You could give it to Yanez, and he's had a performance like that again in his career, or should I say as well in his career against Davey Grant, who I thought beat him as well. He is an absolute fraud of an undefeated fighter. He's a complete fraud in terms of his record. He really should be at least 15-2. I really do think that he lost the Davey Grant and Adrian Yanez fight. Also, super dirty fighter, kicks people in the balls all the time, eye pokes, he threatens eye pokes. Super dirty fighter, cheats a lot, reminds me of a Michael Chandler in that way. He has literally kicked all of his opponents in the nuts. I've never seen a fight of this guy where he did not groin shot his opponent. Did it to John Castaneda, did it to Arwi Quilang, and did it to Yanez. He's literally done it to everybody. Davey Grant, he's done it to everybody he's fought. This dude leaves a really bad taste in my mouth. I don't like him whatsoever. And I think he's going to get absolutely fucking stained in the first round by Montel Jackson, who's a better fighter in every regard of mixed martial arts. Montel Jackson, he's a ranked guy now, coming off of an insane KO over Damon Blackshear. And, he's had a really impressive career. The only 2 losses he's taken really only came because of grappling. Ricky Simone, Brett Johns. He's had a lot of UFC experience as well. If you look at his Dana White Contender Series fight against Rico DeShulio, who had a nice KO on the McGregor season of The Ultimate Fighter, you won't see a much more dominant performance. Destroyed him pillar to post, showed some really good grappling skills. He does have a wrestling background, Montel Jackson does. Has some really good submission skills as well. You see his sub over Brian Kelleher, and just drops motherfuckers all over the place. He has nasty power in his hands. JP Baez, Julio Arce scored some really powerful, significant strikes in those fights. Destroyed René Yaya in the first round with the hands. Destroyed Damon Blackshear with one shot. I mean, the dude has insane KO power. He has good clinch work. He has good knees in the clinch, good body kicks. And, the 1-2 down the pipe is just nasty. Really good straight shots. He has an insane reach advantage here in this fight. I believe he has an 8-inch reach advantage. Daniel Marcos kind of has T-Rex arms. And look, Montel Jackson, he's going to snipe Daniel Marcos with a left hand and put him out cold. Daniel Marcos, he tries to fight like Alex Pereira, kind of keeps his hands down, does get touched. Adrian Yanez was having success touching him up a little bit. I think Montel Jackson has even better boxing than Adrian Yanez. I think he's more accurate, doesn't swing for the fences as much. I think he'll be able to threaten some takedowns as well early in the fight. And I think he's also just much more athletic, much more powerful, more durable. His strikes are going to be thudding, cutting Daniel Marcos, stumbling him around. I think Daniel Marcos, he might have a little bit of volume with some leg kicks and front kicks up the middle. He's got a great front kick. But I think Montel Jackson's going to walk him down, pin him up against the fence, and just lay him out. So yeah, give me Montel Jackson, round 1 TKO. I think that Daniel Marcos is going to come out, a couple leg kicks, couple front kicks, couple peppery shots with the hands. But Montel Jackson, he's going to quickly realize that he doesn't have much to worry about. Daniel Marcos, pretty, one-dimensional. He had a little bit of success with the wrestling against Yanez, but he's not going to have that against Montel Jackson. I think Jackson, he's going to threaten some takedowns, get a takedown early. I think he scores it, beats him up a little bit. Daniel Marcos gets back up to the feet. He's going to be along the fence. Montel Jackson, couple good step-in knees. He's a southpaw, so I think that weapon's going to be good for him. Couple body kicks, and I think Daniel Marcos, he's going to drop his hands a little bit. Montel Jackson comes over the top with a mean left hand, sleeps him out cold. So yeah, give me Montel Jackson, round 1 TKO. He's getting it done. We got Ponzi versus Drod here in the feature fight. Give me Ponzinibbio to get the job done by decision. Drod, he had an okay performance against KG, and then he had a really, really lackluster performance against Alex Morono, who really is washed up at this point. I did not like the look that Daniel Rodriguez had in that Alex Morono fight. He was getting outstruck a little bit at times. He landed his left hand, went to the body decently, but, really one-dimensional, doesn't throw many kicks, doesn't really wrestle all that often, has decent defensive wrestling, but really just kind of sticks and moves with his boxing for the most part. We've seen him get finished up in the past, against Ian Gary, and, I think he's just kind of looking a little slower. Like I said, his performance versus Alex Morono, I had money on him in that spot in a parlay with Thimba Garimbo, and I got worried it was a split decision, very, very close fight, and I just do not like that look. Ponzinibbio, in his last fight, went to absolute war with, who was it? He had a fight with Muslim Salikov that was very close. He got the job done there, which is a good look. King of Kung Fu, one of these old heads that still have some speed, who's still really good. Ponzinibbio beat him there. And he has a lot of UFC experience. I mean, he went on a really good win streak at one point. He was a ranked fighter. He's only ever lost to high-level guys in the 175-pound division. Just has a lot of really good names on his resume. And every single one of his losses, it's a really good fighter. And last time out versus Carlston Harris, he did get dropped in the first round, but even in his old age, he's almost 40 years of age now. I think he's actually 39. Still went to absolute war, had a dog fight, and then he eventually got the stoppage. Just a scrappy fighter, moves forward, lots of reckless abandonment. He imposes his will, and I also think that he has a lot higher fight IQ than D-Rod, who, D-Rod, he'll leave the fight on the table a lot of the times. Ponzinibbio, he does always go out on his shield even if he does lose, always pushes the pace, really does try to get the win. He's a gritty fighter. I like that. So give me Santiago Ponzinibbio to get the job done. I think in the battle of the old heads, it really just comes down to who wants it more, who's grittier at this point in their career. I think Ponzinibbio is going to be able to win this one. I think he's always been the higher level fighter, and they're kind of at the same point in terms of their athletic prime. Give me the higher level fighter all the way in Ponzinibbio to get the job done, and I'll pick him to win by decision. RDR, Reindeer de Ridder versus Bo Nix. We got Bo Nickal taking on Rainer de Ridder. Look, I think Bo Nickal's going to smoke him, to be honest. I am not high on Rainer de Ridder. People think that he's way better than he is. Look, I take zero stock in one championship and what he did over there whatsoever. One championship has absolutely terrible MMA, especially in the higher weight classes. So I really just don't care about that whatsoever. And I'll take a look at his UFC career. His performance versus Gerald Meerschaert was just piss poor. I mean, Gerald Meerschaert was getting the better of a lot of the grappling exchanges, getting in top position at times, had some success with the striking, even though he's old and withered and looks like he's fighting half drunk. GM3 was having success there, and we know how GM3 is at this point in his career. And look, his fight versus Kevin Holland, I literally think that Kevin Holland is one of the biggest bums and disgraces in the entire sport. So I really just don't care about that win whatsoever. Kevin Holland just completely quit in that matchup. As soon as RDR got the takedown, Kevin Holland just completely quit, and RDR got the sub. He did submit Gerald Meerschaert as well. He was able to drop him with the ugliest, straight left you've ever seen in your entire life. Super uncoordinated, super clumsy on the feet, very unathletic. Really, all he has is some decent grappling and submissions. And, look, some decent grappling and submissions, it's not going to beat Bo Nickal. Bo Nickal will lose in the rankings, for sure. But this is not going to be the fight that Bo Nickal loses. Bo Nickal, super explosive, super athletic, super high-level wrestling. Hasn't taken any damage in his career. He went a full 15 minutes last time out. The performance versus Paul Craig wasn't great, but, look, I kind of like the delusion that Bo Nickal had about that performance. I think it made him more confident in his striking. I think that he'll be a little bit more aggressive with his wrestling attack in this fight. I don't think he'll be as afraid of the jiu-jitsu and submission game of RDR compared to a Paul Craig who's submitted the likes of, Magomed Ankalaev, for example. I think Bo Nickal comes into this fight and really puts on a statement here after his last performance. I think that he kind of needed a little feel out versus Paul Craig, who's a little bit tricky, who is tall and rangy and has a good kick on him. I think Bo Nickal comes in here, shows a clear speed advantage with the boxing. I think he's going to hit way harder. I think that he'll be able to score takedowns really whenever he wants to. Easily, he'll be able to take down Reinier de Ridder. And if he doesn't ground and pound and sub him up pretty easily in the beginning of the fight, he'll be able to just control him, mat return him, stay in top position the entirety of the fight. He's been training with guys like Movsar Evloev, Renato Moicano, Chris Duncan, getting really good work down to ATT. He's always training with the Penn State guys with his wrestling. I think that he comes in here, really just shows that RDR is not this high-level double champ that people think he is. I think Bo Nickal absolutely schools and embarrasses him and either wins like a 30-26 decision or finishes him. I'll take Bo Nickal to win by TKO, in fact. I think that Bo Nickal will be able to just outmuscle him, take him down at will, and eventually finish this fight with ground and pound. Bo Nickal, I think, is the much better athlete. He's been competing at a very, very, very high level for the entirety of his life. He knows how to go out and perform. This is not going to be the fight that he loses. It's going to take someone that is super, super sharp with their striking game and can just put him out with one shot and defend all the grappling. That is going to give Bo Nickal issues. It's not going to be Reinier de Ridder. Give me Bo Nickal by absolute domination in this fight. All right, our main event of the evening, Cory Sandhagen versus Deiveson Figueiredo. This is a great fight here, ranked bantamweight action. Former champion in Deiveson Figueiredo, moved up from flyweight after, he had a really good championship run, destroyed, Benavidez, absolutely mopped the floor with him, subbed up Alex Perez pretty easily. Had a lot of good scraps with Brandon Moreno in their quadrilogy that they had. And, moved up after those fights and had some good success in the bantamweight division. Beat Rob Font, schooled him, showed a really good, well-rounded skill set, just dominated that fight. Was able to beat Cody Garbrandt, UFC 300, got the job done by submission, utilizes grappling well there, and then beat Chito Vera. But Peter Yan put an absolute beating on him in their last fight, 50-45'd him, but that's Peter Yan, who's arguably, the most skilled technical fighter in the entirety of the sport's history. Cory Sandhagen, lost to Umar Nurmagomedov last time out, but, it was a pretty close fight, 48-47, 49-46, pretty close fight. And he also showed a really good version of himself. His striking didn't impress me against Umar, but obviously the threat of the takedown and the submission threat was looming in the back of his mind. I don't think that's nearly going to be as much of a problem here in this fight. And his grappling has improved so much since the Aljamain Sterling fight. I've really been impressed with it. TJ Dillashaw was able to get some fence control against him in a couple takedowns, but, his performance against Rob Font, his performance against Chito Vera, where he offensively grappled very well, I was impressed with that. And then also against Umar Nurmagomedov, the defensive wrestling did look good. I mean, it's not like he got subbed. He was able to stuff a lot of the early takedowns, really didn't get taken down and controlled until his stupid fucking coach, Ryan Hall, told him, maybe let's go for a leg lock. Maybe let's go for an Imanari. Some of the worst corner advice I've ever heard in my entire fucking existence. Yeah, Cory, we're down 3-1 against a Dagestani wrestler. Let's go shoot a fucking takedown or roll for a fucking leg against a fucking guy that trains with the most prestigious grappling group in MMA history. some of the stupidest coaching I've ever heard in my entire life. Don't go out there and throw head kicks. Don't throw a flying knee. Don't sit down on mean uppercuts and hooks. Let's go out there and try and impose the will with the grappling. Stupid coaching, stupid corner advice. I literally couldn't believe my ears when I heard that during his fight with Umar. But I actually think this fight is going to go a lot similarly to his Song Yudong performance, where he did offensively grapple a little bit. I think he's going to go for that here in this matchup. He's really been mixing it up well throughout, his last couple of fights. He used to be kind of more of a knockout guy. You think about the spinning heel kick versus Mirage. You think about the flying knee versus Edgar. He had his little KO moment, but, more of a decision guy, more of a tactician at this point in his career. And, he also has a good win that aged well versus Mario Bautista. Dropped him with a flying knee, was able to sub him up there. That win is aging well for sure for Cory Sandhagen. And, you look at the guys he's losing to, Peter Yan, Umar Nurmagomedov. You're talking about some of the best fighters in the history of the bantamweight division. Figueiredo is very good. He's got mean power in his hands. I mean, he's the only guy to ever drop Chito Vera. He dropped Peter Yan in their fight. But I think the range, the length, the height, the distance management, the threat of the takedown from Cory Sandhagen is really going to give Figueiredo a lot of issues. Figgy recently has kind of struggled to get a lot of volume out there. He kind of just tries to headhunt with that big, loaded up right hand that he always has cocked back. I think Cory Sandhagen's going to be able to kick him at range pretty easily, threaten a lot of knees up the middle, flying knees. I think that, he'll go for a lot of good combinations, end it with a leg kick. Figgy backs up against the fence and then Cory shoots a takedown or just uses his height, kind of leans on him in the clinch. I think Cory's just going to get a tactical decision here in this fight. 49-46, maybe he drops the first or second round, kind of being a little timid at first. But I think that 5 rounds, Cory, we know he has the cardio, trains at elevation. Cory's generally a guy that will make fight-to-fight improvements, normally very good at game planning and fighting a specific way against different stylistic matchups. We've seen that throughout his career. Grapple heavy versus Rob Font. Really good defensive wrestling against Umar Nurmagomedov. Mixed it up perfectly against Chito Vera. I like what I see out of Cory Sandhagen. I'm not going to fault him too much for the Umar loss last time out. And Figueiredo, he was also kind of getting touched up on the feet and losing the striking exchanges versus Cody Garbrandt, versus Chito Vera, especially in that second round. You look at the second round versus Chito Vera for Deiveson Figueiredo. Chito having a lot of success on the outside, piecing him up. Figgy, not a lot of volume. I think Cory Sandhagen's kind of going to be able to do that, implement some grappling of his own. Really high fight IQ, just doesn't make a lot of mistakes out there for the most part, unless he's losing the fight. If Cory's winning a fight, he doesn't make many mistakes. If he's losing a fight, then sometimes his fight IQ will start to slip when he starts to take a little bit more risk. But if he's cruising to a decision, which I think he will be here, normally just doesn't make a mistake. I don't think he's going to be getting subbed, taken down, getting his back taken here by Figueiredo. I just don't see that happening whatsoever with the improvements we've seen from Cory in his grappling. So give me the Sandman by decision, 49-46 over Deiveson Figueiredo. And I think that Bo Nickal and Cory Sandhagen makes a really good 2-leg parlay for what it's worth. If you guys enjoyed the video, leave a like, a comment, subscribe. That would mean a lot to me. And have a great rest of your day. Enjoy the card this weekend.